I was teasing Shaft there that I told him it was in the Old Testament. Jonah's in one of those little small books, one of the minor prophets that's just tucked right back there in the Old Testament. I was looking for it myself earlier. It is tucked away back there. And so here, this account of Jonah, as I read through it, as I studied about Jonah, I realized something, that oftentimes Jonah and his story gets relegated to simple children's Bible stories. All right. This is not really a child's Bible story. And even though we talk about him being stuck in a big fish and then all of that account there, it's not a children's story per se. There are some truths in here that I want us to look at today, and I'm going to take some things that seem unrelated, and I think I'm in that frame of mind to take some things that seem unrelated and to take some stuff over here that seem unrelated, put these together, and preach to you for a minute. And except for it's going to be more teaching, and so I'm going to walk around for a bit, and we're going to talk a little bit. But I want us to get to the point where we understand that when God is talking, he is indeed talking generational. There are things that he's talking for the specific people in that time, and then there are things that we learn from him talking to the people at that time that we need to be able to apply to our lives and make some decisions based on God's principles, God's will, and God's way. And here in the book of Jonah, beginning in verse 1, it says, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship which was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. The Lord hurled a great wind on the sea, and there was a great storm on the sea, so that the ship was about to break up. Then the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to their God, and they threw over the cargo which was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone below into the hold of the ship, laying down and fallen sound asleep. If I had a title, I'd say, where can you run from the presence of the Lord? Right. And then sometimes I'd want to title it, those who run from the Lord often just find comfort in sleeping. Sleeping it off. Here there are some things I want you to look at, some details I want you to begin to put into this framework here. We have a man of God, a prophet of God, who is told by God to go on a specific mission, on a specific assignment. And the assignment was to go and cry out to that great city, Nineveh. And the men of God, when given directions, they're supposed to go and follow through with those directions. But here we have the man Jonah, who decides that he's not going to do what God said to do, but instead, I like these words, he is going to flee from the presence of the Lord. And when I read that, I wondered, where can a man run to flee from God? If God is everywhere, where do you run to get away from his presence? And some will simply do what I used to do when it came to eating certain types of food. If I didn't like the food, I used to love those little colored cups, those plastic cups that were thick, you couldn't see from them. And I drink all the liquid out and stuff my greens down in there so you couldn't see them. Well, that's hiding the greens, but not from the presence of my mother. and so it's like that. There are things that we do in our lives where we are trying to hide or flee from the presence of the Lord. Some people may flee and hide behind relationships. Some may choose to hide behind religious a mantle. Some may choose to hide behind religiosity away from the presence of the Lord. Because if I do enough religious things, act in a religious way, seem to be religious, then maybe he'll overlook me. And I'm hiding from the presence of the Lord. Sometimes we can do enough, to be enough, to say enough in the right way. But sometimes we do think that God will overlook what's going on inside of me.
Come on and preach now.
There are times when we present the facade of being something we're not. And we expect God to overlook that. If we begin to change from the inside out, we begin to have an honest appraisal of what's going on, then God can work with us. But as long as I put up the facade that I'm hiding and running from God, and I'm going to do just enough to appear like, to look like, to satisfy my brother there, as long as I can do that, I'm really hiding from the presence of the Lord. I'm trying to. But isn't it true that God searches the inside? And he knows what we're thinking. And so there is no place that we can go to hide. And so I may as well come clean, as the preacher says, come out with my hands up and just confess that I am indeed a sinner. I've done some things that God doesn't like. I may as well confess it because he knows it. Since he knows it, I may as well come clean. All right. I think I told you this. There was a guy going to Sunset. He would always say, I'm just going to tell the Lord I was framed. But that's not going to work. God knows who we are. And here's the thing here. When we begin to admit to God that we haven't been all that we need to be, that we've sinned, that we've fallen short of the glory of God. Listen to that. When we sin, we fall short of the glory of God. God has something magnificent for us, but we won't stretch out and do what he wants so that we can reach it. We come up short of his glory, what he wants for us. And we overlook it as if it's something casual. Then when we come clean with God, he can then clean us up.
Yeah.
He can then begin to use us. But there are so many things fighting against us. And the most common thing that we fight against is that person looking in the mirror. Well, I'm convinced that my struggle isn't with other people. The struggle that Jeremiah has is from that man in the mirror looking back. It's the struggle that each of us faces every day in and day out. Am I going to be honest with myself? If I'm going to be honest with myself, it's not about